Mystery is made possible by Travelers Group. And by the annual financial support from viewers like you. Mystery is a presentation of WGBH Boston.
I'm Paul Kangas with a business news brief. Chemical giant DuPont Company warned today that due to the troubles in Asia and the General Motors strike, its second quarter earnings could be down 10 to 15% from last year's 99 cents per share. The stock tumbled over $7 per share. Meanwhile, JCPenney stock fell nearly $6 after the retailer said its second quarter earnings are not likely to match last year's. Against this downbeat background, Wall Street's blue chip stocks had no chance to follow through on yesterday's 90-point gain in the Dow Industrial Average, as today it fell almost 85.25 points. But the NASDAQ index rose 4.5 points to its second straight record closing high. The American Exchange Index lost a fraction. Tomorrow, our Friday Market Monitor guest is Stan Weinstein, editor and publisher of the Professional Tape Reader. For more financial news, tune into the Nightly Business Report weekdays on this public television station.
Tomorrow night on WETA, you've got a ticket to another great performance special.
Final notes from our favorite three tenors? Hardly. Forget Rome 1990 or LA 1994 because their biggest event ever is still to come. Paris 1998. Jose Carreras, Placido Domingo, Luciano Pavarotti with James Levine conducting an all-new repertoire in a spectacular setting. You have a brand new date with the three tenors, Paris 1998.
See it live, Friday at 3 and again at 9:30.
This week on the Antiques Roadshow, we continue our visit to San Francisco, California.
And this is a spectacular example of the finest dynasty of American painters.
Another hour of exciting discoveries and the stories behind them, right here on this public television station.
That's Saturday at 7 on WETA. WETA is a storyteller, and there are no better stories than those of history. Like the following.
He was called the Great Communicator.
All you wanted to do was fix the camera on his head and let him talk.
But his actions were what changed the world.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
The most popular president of our time was a man that nobody knew. Reagan on The American Experience. Another reason history's best on PBS.
Saturday at 8, right here on WETA.
Next time on Frontline,
we can tell the story by looking at the way the earliest Christians thought about Jesus.
you may think you know the story of Jesus.
Nowhere.
But it's much more than you learned in Sunday school.
Jesus doesn't eat a Passover meal. Jesus is the Passover meal.
Watch the remarkable story of how Jesus became Christ.
Tuesday at 10, right here on WETA.
You're watching WETA, Washington.
Welcome to the broadcast. Tina Brown leaves as editor of The New Yorker and creates a moment for The New Yorker to talk about and think about its future. We'll talk about it here tonight.
It was, she felt, time for her to go. She had this opportunity that she felt was very important to her. As Mort said, the opportunity to be an owner as well as, and not just an employee, meant a great deal to her. And it was a very quiet room.
So I don't know what Cy's going to do. I mean, I think myself that Tina was on the right track editorially for that magazine, and so he's got to find somebody who can continue to do that, but nobody's going to be able to do what she did.
Now, a conversation with Stanley Kaufman in his 40th year as film critic for the New Republic magazine.
It's another paradox. what I would call good, rewarding, serious films, whether they're comedies or dramas, are more frequent these days than good entertainment films. You're supposed to assume that the reverse is true, that the good, serious films are the exceptions. In my opinion,
there are more good serious films.
There are more good serious films.
A program note: yesterday we taped a wonderful segment with Howard Bingham, great and good friend of Muhammad Ali, in a profile with Frank DeFord for Sports Illustrated magazine, which is on the newsstands today. We'll have that segment tomorrow. Tonight, Tina Brown, The New Yorker magazine, and Stanley Kaufman, film critic for The New Republic, when we continue.
Charlie Rose is made possible by USA Networks as part of our continuing commitment to innovative television. Through USA Network and the Sci-Fi Channel, we provide original entertainment to America and the world.
Anywhere, anytime, any book. BarnesandNoble.com, where the world shops for books.
Cisco Systems, the company that brought the internet to business, is pleased to help bring The Charlie Rose Show to PBS. Cisco Systems, empowering the internet generation. And by Bloomberg, a provider of multimedia news and information services worldwide. From our studios in New York City, this is Charlie Rose.
Tina Brown announced yesterday that she is leaving the New Yorker magazine. Her 6 years at the magazine brought celebrity, attention, and numerous awards. She has been credited for bringing the venerable weekly into the 1990s. Her departure leaves a large question mark on the future of the New Yorker. While newsstand sales and circulation have risen in recent years, it continues to lose money for its parent, Condé Nast. Joining me now, Mort Zuckerman, editor-in-chief of U.S. News and World Report, Elaina Richardson, editor of Elle magazine, Jeffrey Toobin, staff writer at the New Yorker magazine, and author Edward Jay Epstein, who's also written for the New Yorker as well as many other magazines. I am pleased to have all of them here to talk about two things, to talk about a story that got a huge amount of attention. Editor of the New York leaving for their new venture. This was the New York Times. Tina Brown starring in media outfit tied to Miramax Films, the Washington Post. It has been the talk of this town, and I suspect in media and journalistic circles in a lot of other towns as well. I began by asking the question, I'll start with Ed Epstein. Why did Tina Brown do this?
Well, I wouldn't know because I heard...
You haven't been on the phone all day?
Well, but you know, the only thing I do think is that she did it, that it came from her initiative, and she decided to do it. I couldn't tell you why. I hope for the best.
Well, I must make one personal note. You are the godfather of
her daughter.
Of her daughter.
Yes, I'm very happy to be there as the godfather, and indeed now I'm happy to be a father. But moving along.
From Isabel to Abigail.
I think really she had a chance to do something that she has always been interested in, which is cinema and television, along with trying to start a new magazine. And I also think that she has been in an exhausting job. People do not realize how demanding it is to put out a weekly magazine such as The New Yorker. So I think that all of these things came together, and I also suspect that she has a chance to have an equity ownership in what she is doing, and so...
And equity is good.
And equity is always good if it works. If it doesn't work, it's not quite as good.
Yeah. What are people saying in the circles, that magazine circles today, about the departure of Tina Brown?
And I think one of the ironic things, I think, is that if she could have brought that kind of, if it had been possible with the New Yorker to parlay it into television, a lot of the articles in there are perfect to do the kind of thing that it sounds as if this new group is going to try to do. And every big company, every magazine is trying to somehow leverage the printed page. You either want to take it into new media and get additional exposure and revenue that way, or you want to do exactly this. You want to have film, television, and build a whole empire coming out of the printed page. So I think one thing everybody's saying is it's great for magazines. It really, for me, it brings home again the whole point that magazines are where ideas begin. It really, it's the place that has the resources, it has the reporting, and everybody draws from the printed page.
And from there you can hatch lots of things, including film and television projects.
Yeah.
You were there. What happened? Tell me, just bring us to the New Yorker when Tina tells you, I ain't your editor no more.
Well, what happened was she came in around 9:30, I think, or a little earlier than that, and met with a very small group of people, of whom I was not one, and told them, David Remnick, Dorothy Wickenden, Pam McCarthy, sort of the inner circle of people who really run the magazine on a day-to-day basis. And then really immediately thereafter, she called the staff to the one place in our offices that's really big enough to accommodate, you know, what must have been about 100 people. And she said in a very sober, not obviously a pained, but not a, you know, grand opera scene, because that's not her style, that she felt time for her to go. She had this opportunity that she felt was very important to her. As Mort said, the opportunity to be an owner as well as, and not just an employee, meant a great deal to her. And it was a very quiet room when she spoke, because there was some, it was not, I mean, I think all of us were surprised to some extent. But, I mean, it was, of course, widely known that she hadn't signed a new contract, and most of us thought that that would somehow be worked out. But it was a scene of just, well, we just never expected this to happen. I mean, we just never thought that despite the controversy about, you know, about whether she'd sign a new contract, that somehow it would all work out. I mean, this is a woman who reveled in her job. I mean, she loved working at this magazine. You can't fake that.
Yeah, I once had a breakfast, and when we were talking about some of that, she said, isn't this great? We sit here talking about ideas and how to translate them to a magazine or to a television show or to a conference. This was a surprise to everybody you knew, right?
It was a surprise, but, you know, I think that things change. People have tenures, they leave, they go on to new things. I don't think it's surprising that someone isn't the editor forever of a magazine.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would say it was an entire surprise. I think she's always been fascinated with movies. You know, her family has been involved in movies. She's always been fascinated by it.
Mother and father, yeah.
Mother and father, in different forms. So I think she has always had a great fascination with Hollywood and with that whole world of entertainment, and a great interest in it. So I can't say that I'm totally surprised. And, you know, as I say, it's very tough going in that.
But you didn't know she was going to make this move
No,
as close as you are.
No, I did not. I did not.
All right. Roll tape. This is a conversation I did with Tina Brown. Later we're going to talk about the New Yorker and what all this means for magazines and what it means for the New Yorker. But first, the personal decision. Roll tape, a conversation I did with Tina Brown earlier. Here it is. Is there any kind of job that would turn you on? You don't want to run a movie studio. We've decided that.
No.
And you never did.
Thank you for your great interest in my career.
I am.
Prospects.
And I want to go through with this now. I want to just play it out. How about running a big company that was not a journalistic endeavor by you? Can you see yourself divorced from the editorial function?
Well, I think anything that I would have to do would have to obviously be editorial driven. You know, I mean, what I do is work with creative people.
You turn the substance of a product around.
You know, I mean, I talk to people about their ideas and then make them happen in some shape or form. That's what I do. I have to work with creative people, and I love doing that. And I couldn't possibly ever want to be in a kind of managerial arena where I wasn't absolutely hands-on with the, you know, creative editorial part of the, you know, the enterprise. So, you know, I mean, I feel with the New Yorker I have the best possible job in that area.
We're going to come back to another clip, but first, for the three of you who've all, either friends or and you may be a friend too, I don't know, Elaina, but you two have written for her. What made her worthy of all this attention and worthy of all this seduction by Miramax?
Well, Tina is...
You're in this issue. I mean, you got a story in this issue called Pass the Popcorn. Edward Jay Epstein finds the real money in movies.
And I also was on the staff of the New Yorker under William Shawn, so I have a long history, and I've known Tina for a long, long time. And she's someone who creates a magnetism around her. She creates an aura. She becomes a symbol. I think that there's also many other people involved, writers and editors, but Tina is Tina, and so when she makes a decision, also as precipitous and as surprising, because it did surprise everyone, I think people pay attention. Whether it should be on the front page of the New York Times, I'm not sure.
That's another decision, yeah. Were you surprised on the front page where it was in placement on the New York Times?
I certainly was.
You have a newspaper, don't you? I can see it on your cover.
It wasn't on the front page of the Daily News, I have to agree, but then again, the New York Times devotes itself to serious news.
You work for her. What is it that makes her an editor?
She thinks ideas are sexy. I mean, she thinks that what's happening in the world can be translated, despite all the media sources that we have at our disposal, that you can publish 3, 4, 8,000 word stories that grab people by the lapels and say, you haven't thought about it this way, you have to read this. Whether it's a subject as old as Anne Frank's diary, where she published this extraordinary work by Cynthia Ozick, whether it's Oscar Wilde, where Adam Gopnik writing about it, whether it's legal stuff that I write about, or any of the, or the, the Mike Tyson fight that David Remnick wrote about, all these subjects covered exhaustively elsewhere or known about elsewhere, how you can take a fresh intelligence and a new approach to these ideas and make them interesting to people. I think it's an extraordinary skill, and she sure has it.
You know something about the hiring and firing of editors, don't you?
Yeah.
I was hoping we were going to get to that.
I'm happy to talk about them, actually. I have quite a few to talk about.
What is it, what do you look for in a good editor?
Well, in the first place, I think what you have to understand about Tina is that she has always been an editor. I think writers have a great deal more difficulty being editors than editors. Although Tina was unique, I think one of the extraordinary things about a lot of editors is that they allow the egos of the writers to flourish. This is where a writer who's an editor often competes with his own people. But she had, I think, a remarkable intelligence, and she has a feeling for, if I may put this, what's hot in a world. I mean, the reason why Tina, I think, has become such a symbol, to use Ed's phrase, is not just because of the New Yorker, but because she basically made Vanity Fair as a magazine and made it into a very hot magazine and had story after story that really became a topic of conversation across the country. And the question was, could she do the same with the New Yorker, which was, when she took it over, in terrible shape financially. I mean, losing tens of millions of dollars. And the question was, could she turn around the New Yorker, which is really a terrifically difficult thing to do. And I think she gave the magazine a great deal more relevance to what was happening today, but still had great difficulties on the...
She turned it around editorially, but was simply...
Yeah, well, there's a huge problem with a magazine like The New Yorker, and indeed magazines like this.
Hold back the commercial consideration. I'm coming to that in a
But I think she was able to take the kind of buzz, so to speak, that she generated with Vanity Fair, and in a different world, create a different kind of buzz. She has a laser-like intelligence. She's really an extraordinary, and she is an absolutely driven editor for exactly what Jeffrey is talking about, and that's a very, very rare commodity.
You didn't compete with it. This magazine doesn't directly compete with Vanity. It does with Vanity Fair in part, but this is a monthly, and she had a weekly magazine.
Yeah.
How did you see Tina Brown as an editor? I'm only interested in this because we're going to talk about impact on the New Yorker, where it goes from here.
Yeah, she was obviously an extraordinary editor, and whether it was at Vanity Fair or the New Yorker, and it seems to me she did exactly what Mort's saying, that she made things alive beyond just a printed page, and that's why it does seem natural to me she would take it a step further. And it's obvious.
A venture where you can use other medium other than the magazine to take the ideas to a different place.
And if you're a genius at creating buzz and having everybody talking about something, of course, you mentioned the David Remnick, which, you know, so many of those New Yorker pieces then became very successful books, and she's very good. She's an editor who sees that there's a big idea and that the big idea could grow.
What's the best example of a New Yorker piece that became a big book?
Well, the one coming out is the Tyson story.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, David has a book coming out shortly about Muhammad Ali and sort of the making of him and the sort of recent history of boxing.
One more piece from our interview. Roll tape. Here it is. There's nothing that you can imagine that would turn you on to say, okay, I've done this. I've done magazines. I made Vanity Fair. I'm satisfied with the transformation of the New Yorker. So where's my next
I think
challenge?
what I think will be fun will be to develop the New Yorker as, you know, in other areas perhaps. That could be fun.
Well, you're already doing that. You've got every writer who writes for the New Yorker doing books.
Yes, we have books. You know, but I think it might be interesting to develop, you know, some of the material into movies.
There's a whole list of these.
Sure. No, we generate so many stories that go into the movies anyway. You know, it might have been fun at some point for the magazine to get involved in doing that, maybe.
New Yorker films.
Might have been interesting to do.
Why do you say might have, as if it can't be done now?
Well, I mean, maybe it could be. I mean, I've never really, you know, explored it, but I think the franchise is such that we continually keep on sort of serving our material to others. It obviously makes a lot of sense at some point for us to think about whether we want to do some of that ourselves. But we're not at that point yet, but we might well be so.
I want to move now to what someone said to me today, said, as interesting as this is about Tina Brown, this is really the moment of About New Yorker magazine. This is a magazine which either will change and become something else or not. Help me understand what they mean by that.
Well, I mean, I'd be happy to. I mean, I think you have just a huge problem in sustaining a magazine like The New Yorker in today's culture. It is symbolic, it seems to me, that she moves into an area where she hopes to, in a sense, convey ideas into television and film, because that, in a sense, is where the economics sustain it to a much greater degree today than it does in the magazine world. The New Yorker, until the 1970s, was a magazine that was read primarily by women, educated women who were frankly married to well-to-do men who had a lot of time on their hands, who could read that kind of a magazine on a regular basis every week. From the 1970s on, that audience basically went to work. 80-odd% of that audience in the upper quintile, the educated people, women, work. And so they had a great deal of difficulty, in a sense, attracting the advertising that would appeal to an audience that was no longer there for this kind of magazine. Those women now have time to read maybe a monthly, but they don't have time to read a weekly. So she tried to make it more relevant, to cut the articles down. But even still, people just didn't have the time to read that kind of a magazine. And that was a real problem. It's a real problem for all those magazines which, in a sense, focus on ideas. Those magazines are in difficulty all across the country, not just The New Yorker.
Okay, let me understand what she did, because you have the history of The New Yorker, how The New Yorker is a different magazine today than it was when you used to work for Mr. Shawn.
Well, The New Yorker was black and white,